I'm living in a Mandela Effect nightmare that I can't seem to wake up from. I've heard so many stories about it that I was convinced that there must be something about it. However, I never imagined that it would happen to me. I moved from my hometown to Boston in 2002. I really enjoyed the city. The sounds, the bustle, and the anonymity. In a city that size, it's easy to blend in, fly under the radar. And I never expected to run into an old friend from school. I was cutting through the New England Medical Center on my way home from shopping. The hospital is a rather busy place, but I wanted coffee. I looked at the line and sort of sighed. But the hospital is in Chinatown, and at that time, there weren't many places to get a decent cup of coffee. Tea? Sure. 100 different kinds in as many shops. So my options were limited, and I got in line. This decision is how this strange event began. So I got out of En Bon Pan with my coffee, and headed for the back door which led to my street. I nearly reached the door when I heard a woman call my name. I turned around to see a woman who, after looking at her for about 15 seconds, I recognized her from home as, for the sake of anonymity, we can call Jenny. My mouth dropped and we hugged. She asked all the usual questions. What was I doing here? If I were sick, how had I been? Y'all know the drill. I hadn't seen her in many years, and I was both surprised and happy. So of course I brought her home. On the short walk, we began catching up with what was going on with our lives. This is where I should mention that at the time, I was in an addiction pretty deeply. I soon came to find out that she was as well. She asked me if I wanted to get high, and of course I agreed. So the two of us went back to my place. I lived on the 5th floor of a 7-story building. We went inside and my husband wasn't home, so we flopped down and got to business. As the day went on, I found out the sad truth, that she was also working the streets. This made me sad. I lived in the part of town that for many years was called the combat zone. No explanation necessary. So I was used to seeing the woman coming out after dark. But the reality that my old friend was one of those girls upset me. But I didn't judge, nor do I now. I knew her pimp. He was an acquaintance, and a dealer, and had been up to my place many times. She said she needed to hook up with him, and asked for my phone number so they could stop by later. So this became an almost daily thing. Neither had a place to live, so in exchange for drugs, I let him, let's call him Max, stay. She could stay anytime. I never dreamed of asking her for anything. She got along well with my husband, and we, along with some other straight folk who I did expect drugs from in exchange for a spot to sleep, became a very dysfunctional family. After a time, hubby and I forgot to do certain things, like go to work or pay the rent. So at the end of the year, we were evicted. Jenny and I tried to keep in touch, but being a working girl takes one to different locations, meaning parts of the city with fewer cops looking to jam you up. And we lost touch. So now it's 10 or so years later. My hubby passed away, and I had gotten sober. I was living in the next city over with a man called Jim. He and I were watching the news one morning when I saw a story about a woman found dead in the city street. I remember watching in disgust, as the crime was particularly horrible. I won't give details. Jenny had been murdered. I told Jim the short version of the story I just told y'all. I was glued to the TV screen. Then the camera switched to a reporter interviewing Jenny's mom. It was heart-wrenching, and I had a lump in my throat. After the story ended, I got up, put on my jacket, and walked out of my house. I wandered around trying to wrap my head around it, but I was truly heartbroken. Present day. About 2 weeks ago, I logged into Facebook. I don't really pay a lot of attention to it, but for some reason I checked my page, and to my absolute horror, I had a friend request. From Jenny. Dead Jenny. Murdered Jenny. I thought this must be one sick fucking joke. I couldn't figure it out, so I called my daughter and asked her to check out this very newly created page to see if she noticed anything funny about it. It had only been created recently, and most of the pictures were taken far away, making it tough for me to tell if this was her. But how? My daughter scrutinized the page and decided that this was indeed real. I immediately signed into the Boston PD website to see if I could get any info on Jenny. Nothing. I googled circumstances of the murder. Nothing. I dug all morning with no results, so I emailed the public liaison at BPD with questions on her case, and I waited. Yesterday I got an email back. There were no hits, and she asked if I had any further information to help her narrow the search. I was at a loss. This made no sense. So I spoke with my daughter and asked if she remembered me telling her about it. She didn't. I had also told another friend about it. He doesn't remember either. And Jim passed away 2 years ago, so it's not like I can ask him if he remembers. So in order to try to continue with some semblance of sanity, I need to believe that this is an example of the Mandela Effect, albeit a particularly horrific one. This made me a believer, and I do believe that I hope this never happens to me again.